Do we have a quorum, please?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Fennel is present. Councilmember Runninbaum is present. Mayor Moss is present. Councilmember Young is present. Councilmember Crummell is present, and Councilmember Contreras.
Thank you. This time, would you please rise, please? We'll start the meeting with a moment of silence. Please join me. Thank you. At this time, Mayor Pro Tem Leah Young is going to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, we have a proclamation from Senator Pat Fallon's office for the police department. Jennifer, you want to come forward, please, with Chief West? Right here in front of the table would be super.
Senator Fallon wanted to give y'all a resolution from the state of Texas. Under the leadership of Chief Kerry West, the Willow Park Police Department has demonstrated an unyielding commitment to serving local citizens by upholding the high standards of law enforcement protection, and its officers and staff may take justifiable pride in this notable achievement. Now therefore be it resolved that the Willow Park Police Department be congratulated on its recognition by the State Police Chiefs Association, and all those associated with the department be extended sincere best wishes for continued success on their important work. Thank you very much.
The old person gives you permission.
Hold your breath.
Thank you. Item number 1, approve City Council regular meeting minutes, July 21st, 2020, of the regular meeting. Do we have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the city council meeting minutes from July 21st, 2020.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion or questions? All in favor? Thank you. Regular agenda items. Item number 1, to consider an act on Jacob and Martin's recommendation to build a wastewater treatment plant. We have some emails to be read by Alicia, and we have some speakers. So, Alicia, please proceed.
First email is David Sweeney, 1121 East Loop, 820 South, Fort Worth, Texas. Ms. Smith, I hope this email finds you well and gets read at tonight's meeting. I really wanted to attend, but I had prior commitments that prevented me from attending. I live at 421 Quail Ridge Road and stand by my comments from the last council meeting opposing the treatment plant. At the last meeting, it was said that Willow Park doesn't want to enter into an agreement with a neighboring municipality on the sewage needs of Willow Park because Willow Park doesn't want to subject its residents to another municipality's rate hikes. But Willow Park is willing to enter into an agreement with Fort Worth to have water brought in and be subject to rate hikes on the water. That doesn't make sense if you don't want to subject residents to the rate hikes of another city. Also, as said at the last meeting, Willow Park is not just Willow Park. It is part of a much larger community commonly referred to as just Aledo. That would include Willow Park, the Three Annettas, as well as Aledo proper itself. When you run into someone in town and they ask you where you live, regardless of the actual city you live in, most people just say Aledo. We are a community that has always worked together. I understand the need to figure out how to handle public infrastructure in light of the growth your individual city as well as the entire Aledo community is experiencing. That being said, if you go off on your own on this and don't try to be neighborly with the community, I don't think it will go well in the future. maybe it would be a good idea to approach all the other municipalities and try to come up with a master plan for sewage whereby a cooperative is formed by all the individual municipalities in the community to tackle this major issue and all participate in it together instead of individually. Otherwise, we will eventually have a massive mess to deal with later on. I truly hope we don't have to contest this legally and can work things out like neighbors by having a healthy, constructive dialogue. But that would require Willow Park to slow down and talk to its neighbors, which I don't think Willow Park cares to do. The second one is P. Matthew Dillon and Gina Fulner Dillon, 100 Pleasant Court, Willow Park. Dear Willow Park City Council, we are writing in protest of the proposed sewage treatment plant. This decision affects residents of Willow Park in numerous ways, including financially. We feel that there are other options that can be considered, and ultimately, this decision should be brought up to the residents for a vote. Thank you. The next one is Julianne Galasso. There is no address. I oppose the water treatment center that is proposed for Annetta. Please reconsider the location as that waterway runs through neighborhoods, children, adults play in it, and it will negatively impact the ecosystem. The next one is Carmen Smith, no address. I am completely saddened by what I am hearing of the plan to have a plant that will dump even treated sewage into the Trinity River. I, for one, live on this river and have a wonderful view of this river. We have even built a beautiful deck that overlooks the area. In the spring, when the river is rolling, it is just breathtaking. During the fall, when all the leaves turn colors and fall onto the water's top, it's even more breathtaking. Our kids have fished and swam in it, and we have taken countless family photos in the river rocks. Wildlife depend on this water for survival. By dumping this sewage, it is not only wrong, but will completely deplete the wildlife around here. Deer, turkeys, coyotes, hawks, beavers, raccoons, fish, birds, and so much more depend on the clean, untouched water supply. I really want those that are heading this plan to think to themselves, if it were their backyard, would they want to do this? The next one is Ted Gupton, MD, no address. I am writing to voice my disgust at the plans to install a sewage treatment plant with runoff of treated waste into the adjacent floodplain south of I-20 near Annetta North. I have friends that live in the area whose families use the plain for recreation. I am appalled that the drinking supply to the greater Fort Worth-Aledo area will be contaminated by this treated wastewater. As a pediatric interventional radiologist, I place chemotherapy ports daily in young children at Cook's Children's Hospital, as well as adults at other local hospitals, perform countless biopsies on cancers, and am well aware of the cancer burden that our community faces. I cannot imagine living in a community where any more of this practice of irresponsible waste removal is permitted. Please hear my cry of dismay and indignation at this proposal, and please bring it to an end for the health and well-being of your community. The next one is Tara Kindred, no address. Willow Park is a very nice community with nice people in it. I'm vehemently opposed to placing the sewage behind TCA. I am vehemently, sorry about my chopping over, opposed to a closed forum of discussion on this topic for its residents who must pay for this plan. Please open up for dialogue amongst the residents and the communities it affects. Excuse me. Dear Ms. Smith, I found out today about, Ed and Dion Dupstad. I found out today about the waste treatment project and the dumping into the Trinity. I have included pictures of my kids and neighboring kids playing by this river that we fish in, splash around in, and hike around all the time. We also built a dirt bike track right next to the river on our back pasture. We bought a house with 25 acres 3 years ago to raise our children on land so they could do all the things kids do when they have the privilege to be raised outdoors on land. I grew up in Mineral Wells, and this was my dream as I grew up on several acres. I married a city boy, but as he visited my parents' property, he decided he also shared my passion for land. We recently purchased 10 more adjoining acres, all right next to the river. Along with our dirt bike track, we are using the 10 acres to build dirt bike trails for not only my 4 boys, but their friends as well. I included a picture of 2 of my boys and several of their friends that come over almost every weekend to enjoy our land and ride their dirt bikes. There is the cutest bridge that crosses the river and it connects our land. We have had an engineer out recently to help stabilize the bridge so we can ride the dirt bikes across safely. We have big plans for our land. It is a dream come true to have a farm with our cows and horses. Please reconsider this waste dumping project so my kids and neighbors can still send their kids to play without worry. The next one is from Judy Lamora, Parker County. I oppose the location of the sewage plant under consideration. Please reconsider polluting our natural waterways. The next one is from Terry Coote, no address. Why are we wanting to spend all this money when the system we have is only 2 to 3 years old, when there's so much that needs to be done in other areas? Melissa Murph, 555 Quail Ridge Road, Aledo, Texas. I'm a longtime resident of Aneta North. Our property backs up to the Clear Fork, very close to where the wastewater from the planned treatment facility will be dumped. First, we take grandchildren to our low water crossing on a regular basis to play and fish. There are many families along this waterway that do the same. It is very concerning relative to the harmful issues with dumping water into the river. Furthermore, how is it possible for Willow Park to even think they can empty water from the treatment facility into a waterway located in another city? No one in Aneta North wants a treatment facility close to their properties. Please consider this plan relative to Aneta North's involvement in Willow Park's wastewater treatment planning. Thank you. The next one is Amanda Hauser, no address. As a local resident, I'm appalled that adding a water treatment plant is even being discussed. I have 4 young boys who enjoy Aneta North, and it would be absolutely devastating to have treated sewage water be dumped. The next one is Bob Deller, no address. Trinity Bluffs homeowner, sorry. It has come to our attention of the city of Willow Park setting up the possibility of dumping 1 million gallons of sewage per day on a floodplain in Aneta North. The sewage would eventually dump into the Trinity Clear Fork, thus heading downstream to affect thousands of homeowners and wildlife. We obviously don't think this would be a great idea and could affect our property values and harm the wildlife that use the Clear Fork as a source of water. This should be stopped immediately and another site should be considered with due diligence. I would love to hear your thoughts on this matter. Thank you. The next one is Lauren Peel, no address. I'm a resident and landowner in Aledo, and I'm deeply concerned about Willow Park's proposed sewage plant. My livestock drink out of our pond and will be directly impacted by this. Plus, it is in a floodplain. What will happen when it floods? This is not right, and I urge you to reconsider. Julia Durand, no address. I object to Willow Park dumping sewage into a floodplain. This affects our town. I expect you to get a few more emails today. Cassandra Tidwell, 428 Verde Road, Willow Park. Dear council members, as a resident of Willow Park for 30 years, I have questions about this property the city wants to buy. I appreciate that Amy Fennell made this information available. What is the acreage of this property to be purchased? For what purpose does the city have for this property? Why is it necessary to buy it so quickly? Why was this planned without council authorization? Why pay $1 million for a piece of property that is appraised at a lower price? Why does the city want to buy property in a floodplain? If it is used for Willow Park purposes, won't it cost a lot more money to just make it a usable piece of property? Please ask these questions at the next council meeting. I believe with Amy Fennell that Willow Park leadership can do better than this. Carolyn and Jerry Thompson, 439 Quail Ridge, Aneta North. As one of the many landowners downstream of the proposed wastewater site, and as the owners of the land shown on the map to be the location for the wastewater discharge point, we adamantly object to both the location of the plant and the discharge point. The proposed site is a floodplain that does have standing water for several months of the year, has flooded heavily in the recent past, and puts those living downstream at personal risk, financial and environmental damage. Our land is within the Aneta North boundaries and not Willow Park city limits, Yet you, as the elected city government of Willow Park, are planning to discharge treated sewage water from our land. The proposed site is on the extreme edge of Willow Park city limits, and those who will be affected by your decision have a no voice and cannot vote against any of the elected individuals in future elections. This behavior shows disregard for your neighboring cities and landowners downstream.
Okay, we have a couple of speakers. Rachel DeMoss.
Time limit, remind those people your time limit.
Mr. Moss, you have 5 minutes.
Yes, sir. First of all, I brought some pictures that many of you have probably already seen online.
You're gonna pass them around for you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Save you some
Wasn't
time.
sure, I have like a kindergarten report there.
That's all right.
So I have three main concerns. At the last meeting, someone spoke regarding the Clear Fork being deemed an insufficient stream due to low oxygenation levels. I went through the reports. The latest watershed report I found was by a third-party entity from Charlton who tested oxygenation levels in 2001, and a report was completed in 2003. This report was finally reviewed and accepted by the TCEQ in 2010. I'm told this is normal. I would like a new assessment. In particular, I don't see any monitoring in the area where this drainage pump is supposed to go to, the south of I-20. There's not a single monitoring mark according to the TCEQ on their website. So a 17-year-old report holding our river in this insufficient stream status, and my understanding is that this status is what is allowing you to continue with your plan to dump your city's wastewater into my city, Annetta North. I do not see any monitoring stations along this area of the river, which is what I just said. So I would appreciate if environmental considerations could be shown. If they have been made, I'd like for them to be more present and shown. Number two, I don't see any other options being presented or discussed. Why are we so determined to put this plant in a floodplain? I don't know where my pictures are, but I've lived there for 26 years. That water goes very, very far into the field. And when your plant floods and my field is filled with sewage, that's a problem, and that is not being a good neighbor. My third point, and probably my most passionate, is that this river is recreational. From my research, I feel like that should alone get the TCEQ to reevaluate their status of an insufficient stream. My husband kayaks on the river. There's a picture somewhere. My kids fish at least once a week on that river. We see catfish in the river, big catfish. We catch carp in the river. There's enough oxygen in that river to support the fish. My children have a ride. They have called the Disney ride, and they let the waves roll them down the river. So I think the status of this river needs to be reassessed, and I would like another study to be performed. In closing, please give us some more supporting evidence that you are considering our environment. Show us plans in place to protect our wildlife and our land. Please do not do this to your neighbors. And not everyone will be able to see it, but this is a video of my kids going down the river on their Disney ride. It's what they do all the time and they ask to do. So it's being used and we love it, and we would like for you to take care of your neighbors and do the right thing.
Thank you. Mr. Jim Sweeney.
Beg your pardon?
Jim Sweeney.
And you want to speak? I don't.
No, other than, I want a sewer line running through my place. I came out here in '85 to get out of Fort Worth because my son came close to getting kidnapped twice. And the river has flooded twice since 1985. And I've been there. And I know it's going to smell in the winter when the north wind blows. And basically, it's going to destroy the value of what I worked for all these years. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Richard Miller? Okay, thank you. Fleeman Wright, did I say that right?
No, sir, it's Cleveland.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Cleveland Wright, 1539 Hunter Glen Drive. I'm the president of the McDavid Estates Homeowners Association. McDavid Estates is a subdivision off Highway 5 that lies west of your proposed site. It appears the site is within a quarter to a half mile of our nearest resident and a mile from our furthest. There are 174 homes in the subdivision. The majority of these residents fall within the Willow Park extraterritorial jurisdiction. The ETJ gives us no representation on this panel, nor will we receive any benefits from this project when completed. I note that from your handout, you say you haven't made a rushed decision, but it seems from mid-July to now is pretty rushed. And if that's not rushed, it still has denied us the opportunity to understand the scope of the project and its potential impact on our subdivision. The second point I think that's critical is to mention the possibility of mitigation of any negatives that will result in the placement with regards to the numerous subdivisions this intrudes on below I-20. Whether intended or not, this appears to be a rather cavalier attitude and approach towards the people that literally will have this in their backyards. Tonight, I would say that I do appreciate the fact that you've allowed us to speak, as well as last night. And I understand that there's more steps in the process. But you've been working on this for almost 2 decades. And it seems a little more time could be taken to inform, because it's very obvious there's a lot more questions than the handout has answered. And the handout raises a lot more questions. And there's a lot of misinformation as well circulating in many of the neighborhoods south of I-20. So a little more time to educate us might help in establishing and maintaining a good neighbor relationship. But to approve it tonight without any further delays to allow for more community input will not appear to be the actions of a good neighbor. It will mean that our only recourse will be to fight you at every single step of the next 13 steps that are left, or whatever the number is after tonight. And I don't think that fighting you every single way is something you really want to have happen. I know these fights may be protests to state officials or federal officials, or similar hearings going and citizens speaking against this, but it could ultimately end up in the courts. And I can't help but feel that in your haste to deny us the opportunity to work with you and not against you, that you're going to leave us in a situation that we will leave tonight, but I don't think we will go quietly into the night. We may be neighbors, but I do not think this will make us friends.
Thank you. Mr. Christian Ellis.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Christian Ellis, 415 Quill Ridge Road. Good to see you again. When I researched the purchase of my home, I looked at the surrounding land uses in Annetta and Willow Park. I was pretty diligent before I bought the home, and I even pulled up the August 2014 future land use document published by the city of Willow Park as a part of my due diligence. When I looked at it, the land at issue here tonight is actually on the city's plan. It's listed as parks and open spaces. That's the last plan from this city that tells us, your neighbors, what you're going to do with this land. It is not marked industrial. Yet now you're wanting to push on us the placement of a significant industrial, polluting, odorous sewage plant within a half mile of my house. This is a terrible development for me and for my family. We moved out here from Fort Worth to be with nice people, beautiful land, good neighbors, and clean air. That's what we wanted. And many of those things appear to be in jeopardy to us right now. In Mayor Moss's closing statements last week, he talked about how he brought a renewed spirit of communication with Willow Park's neighbors. I appreciated the sentiment. However, I actually talked to our mayor about the issue and asked him whether or not anyone had reached out to him about this issue. He told me, no, that hadn't happened. He found out about this the hard way. He reached out to Mayor Moss himself and at the end of June. And to Mayor Moss's credit, he did call him right back and did talk to him about it. There's no question. But our mayor and our town would have appreciated advance notice and would have appreciated the neighborly pickup of the phone in line with the spirit of communication with which you spoke so eloquently last week. A lot of what I do for a living is fight people. I'm a lawyer and I litigate a lot. And my life is kind of like the old joke where the doctor and the lawyer are arguing about who has the tougher job, and the doctor says, well, you know, my job is tougher because everything I do is a matter of life and death. And the lawyer says, well, think about it this way. What if there was another doctor standing on the other side of the surgery table trying to mess up everything you do while you do it? That'd be a lot harder, wouldn't it? That's kind of my life. And now we find ourselves in a position where the people who own the land in this area and who value it and love their clean air and love the beautiful space and love their good neighbors are going to stand across the table and fight everything you do. And that makes things really, really hard. But we also have the option of working together and figuring it out. I came to you as a neighbor last week. I come to you as a neighbor this week. I'm not here to hurl accusations, make, conspiracy statements or anything else. I appreciate the sentiment of neighborliness, and I want it to actually happen in this instance. So for my money, I'd rather do the peace part. That's why I moved here. I wanted peace for me and my family. We'll fight for our land if we have to, with everything we've got. But I'd rather work it out. I'd rather have peace. Let's talk it out. Let's get a few engineers together. Let's talk to other communities like Annetta or Annetta North or Annetta South or Hudson Oaks or whoever it is about their wastewater needs. There are some needs out there.
1 minute.
Thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate it. I needed it last time. Thank you. Let's talk to those communities about their wastewater needs. I know that they have those wastewater needs. Those exist. So let's get engineers. Let's get stakeholders. Let's get the private landowners who own this land, whose land might be dealt with from an eminent domain standpoint, and talk to them and work out a deal. There's potentially a way to hook up with another city with a pre-existing wastewater plant that could be expanded, and we avoid a lot of this. At the end of the day, when you go it alone, a few things happen. You increase cost. You bear all the burden of cost yourself. You face challengers from all fronts. And you set yourself up for a reputation of unneighborliness with your surrounding cities. And you know what? Eventually, if Willow Park wants a favor from another neighbor, that reputation may end up hurting you and costing you dearly. And Willow Park could find itself without any friends. So I ask you, last sentence, I ask you to slow down this train. Put off the application deadline with the water board. Meet with your neighbors. Meet with the landowners. Meet with the towns. I imagine there's a deal to work out, and at the end of it, you'll have your wastewater handled, and you'll have some friends. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Clayton Hartley,
He's outside.
okay?
Mr. Mayor, when the speakers are done, I have 2 more emails that I didn't get because they came in after I was already in here.
Okay,
I'll read them.
okay.
name is Clayton Hartley. I represent my family's land holdings there at 705 Quail Ridge, stretched across over to 1282 Jenkins Road. I stand in front of the city council for the second time in less than a week. Second time I've ever been in front of any city council for that matter. We don't get involved in the politics. But we are growing gravely concerned that y'all are continuing on this path of dumping your sewage into another city's creek. My family's creek, my neighbor's creek, my city's creek, my community's creek. It's not morally right, it's not ethically right. I know that myself, my family, we're gonna stand against it, and I mean, we're nothing but a pea in a pod, we're a flick of sand. And if we're willing to stand up for this, I feel like you guys aren't realizing what's coming over there. You're waking a sleeping giant. And I think the ramifications you guys just haven't considered. But I beg you and I implore y'all to slow this down, stop this, and don't dump your sewage in another city's creek without the permission. It's just not right. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. William Bell.
I want to say just a few things. I'm a licensed professional engineer. My engineering experience is 30 or 40 years old. I did take graduate level wastewater classes, but I'm a property owner. I own almost 1,000 feet of frontage on the Clear Fork, and I'm not worried about the discharge from a sewage treatment plant because the levels and the requirements by the state and the EPA, are so strict that the water that will come out of the sewage treatment plant will meet drinking water quality standards. And, excuse me, I get a little nervous, but.
Would you drink it?
No, I wouldn't drink it, but here's the thing. If you took it to a lab and tested it, it would meet those standards. And it's oxygenated. The Clear Fork gets very low. And so what they put out has to be able to support the life of all the fish. So as a property owner, I'm not worried about the discharge. What's so bad is all the cattle. My wife and I raised 11 kids on our land, and they play to the river all the time. And so as an engineer and as a property owner, I'm not worried about this. It's got to happen. Our area is growing like wild, and water goes downhill, and it's got to go somewhere. But the plant that they create has got to meet these very strict standards. So I just want to throw that out. But one thing I am curious about, I also own some property on the other side of Bankhead Highway, right on the other side of the Willow Parks border. And I'm wondering, is the sewage treatment, will that be available to all the people that live in that area? Does anybody?
Can I answer the question, or? Sure. We will certainly look to provide that. Obviously, we want to take care of our ratepayers first. But I'll get with our engineer and we'll certainly see if we can make it available to you.
Yeah, there's some areas on the south side of Bankhead Highway that don't have service, and I think it would be a benefit, and it's something that should be considered in the planning of making that available. It would also, help fund, as you were able to charge rates to different people like that. But I think there certainly people around me would like to have that availability. So anyway, that's all I've got.
Thank you.
What was your name one more time, sir?
I'm William Bell.
Bell, okay. Thank you.
Alicia, you have a couple emails?
Yes, sir. First one is Kathy Kinney, 138 Deerfield, and I would like to apologize. These came in after I came in to set up the room. It is a sad time for Willow Park. A handful of people shouldn't have so much power over a few. I still say there are nefarious things going on behind the scenes in regard to the sewage plant. The spending by this administration is way out of line for a city of this size. You will not silence us, Mr. Renenbaum, and ordering that from your city council seat is disgusting. Mr. Moss, when you ostracized Amy, reminded me of high school cliques long ago, and when you humiliated Amy, Brian Grimes, by telling her people only liked her because she looks like a pretty bartender, the citizens of Willow Park elected her to represent us. This small city cannot sustain more debt. How does a property go from $170,000 to $1.4 million so quickly? Who is profiting from this? Why are we not being a good neighbor to Annette and rushing to push this through? Follow the money for answers. The truth will come out sooner or later. I just hope we still have a city. The second one. Marcy Alley, 500 Squaw Creek. I'm fairly certain that the first agenda item to approve building a wastewater treatment facility on the property south of I-20 will pass tonight. Approval to ratify the contracts associated financing the new sewer plant site will pass as well. I do not support the current path forward. I support finding another solution. I support including the public on future plans that will directly affect so many. The current 7.56 acre property where the sewer plant now sits can handle increased infrastructure to accommodate our growth well beyond 2040. I've spoken to members of council and staff about other options, like offloading the additional discharge northward to Lake Weatherford via 1.7 miles of piping. The current plan is to pump our effluent south into the Netta North for approximately 2 miles. I have discussed discharging the increased effluent as a land application and into possible retention ponds in the shops area. Of course, agreements with golf courses are acknowledged by council and staff, but discounted because of the lack of ownership rights to the land. Any wholesale option is now met with the narrative of losing our capability to set our own sewer rates. Did we care this much when we signed away our ability to set water rates with Fort Worth? The bottom line is that most of the process to establish a new sewer plant solution has not been discussed in the public. I do not care how many members of council claim that the project has been discussed for a year. If discussions aren't happening during council meetings, the public isn't going to know what is truly happening. I read the capital improvement plan that was provided to the council in Granbury last summer. A new location for the sewer plant was shown in an area within the bluffs, 82 acres on Crown Road across from Oeste Golf Course. Obviously, at some point, that location changed, and nobody knows when or who made the decision. I keep up with a lot of things that most people don't, and I have been surprised at the speed of this effort over the last 2 months. We need to be good neighbors. We need to stop catering to the few who seem to dictate city business and development. Thank you. That's all, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Grimes, would you like to elaborate?
So we're still on one, right? So this is, the agenda item reads to consider and act on the recommendations to build a wastewater treatment plant facility. This is a preliminary feasibility report, which means the report will change over time. The final report will not be completed for a number of months, potentially. Is Derek out there? Right here. Hello. Final report's 18 months to 2 years, probably?
Probably.
Okay. So this is, this is your preliminary feasibility report that is on the docket for approval. A couple things I just want to point out and answer some of the questions that the public had answered. City of Willow Park's been dumping into the Clear Fork since 1995. Is that correct, Greg?
Correct. 25 years.
25 years.
Now of 250,000 gallons a day.
It was, yes.
So since 7 o'clock this evening, when this meeting started, about 7,000 gallons of effluent have gone into that river.
Yes.
And that's the only reason there's water in that river, probably during the summertime.
As Eric pointed out last week, there's roughly a dozen points of discharge in the Clear Fork in that area, going from Lake Weatherford to the discussed site. So there's plenty of, if you want to call it affluent, sewer, whatever, going into the creek. And it's not just Willow Park putting it in there. There's other entities doing it as well. This afternoon, I had our Public Works Director bring me a bottle of effluent that came out of the plant. This is at roughly 5:30 today. I got 2 jars here. One's tap water, one's effluent. I'll drink both of them. But the point is, this is what's going into the river. There have been some incredibly ill-advised discussions on social media sites about raw sewer pumping into the river. I think that was done to probably alarm and scare and perhaps alert some of you folks. And you're from a staff standpoint, we hear you. We took notes on everything that's coming up. I wanted to let you know that this is what's going in, one of these 2 jars. It's not the raw sewer, it's not the old gray stuff that's coming in there. This is 7,000 gallons of one of these jars has gone in since about 7 o'clock today. So I hope that that can quell some of your concerns. We do want to work with our neighbors. We want to be good neighbors. Gentleman spoke about Annetta North, and I appreciate that. We also have the discussion that I don't think has been brought up, and we've heard roughly 16 today. Is that the letters, the 18 with the 2 last ones?
Actually, 19.
19? We heard roughly a dozen that came in last week, and we've heard probably an hour worth of public comment. By my best guess, none of them paid sewer rates in Willow Park. This is a revenue bond. This is not a tax-backed bond. So this is going on the ratepayers in Willow Park. We have roughly 800, give or take, ratepayers. We have roughly 2,200 water accounts. We have approximately 650, 700 that are already permitted that are coming online. Those are the individuals that will be paying for this. Someone mentioned, why are we not going to Weatherford? Why wasn't Weatherford brought up? Weatherford's going to be roughly 25 to 30 million by the time you shake it all out.
Plus that 4.5 million gallon, or 4.5 million gallon per day plant dumps into, I believe, Town Creek, which goes into the same location.
Yes. If we go with Weatherford, the sewer bill here is roughly $50. That's your average sewer bill. It's a base rate plus your per thousand on water. We will have to issue a starting rate of $100 for our ratepayers. $1,200 a year for sewer. So yeah, we looked at other options for our ratepayers. At the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to be paying the bill on this. And so we certainly want to be good neighbors to you. We certainly want to work with you. And we certainly we're open to dialogue. But at the end of the day, I think as far as staff's concerned, and I think council's the same way, we have ratepayers. We have a situation and a problem that has to be solved soon. We have found a viable solution, but we have found other solutions as well. We have found a very, very friendly terms on funding. As I said last week, we're at 0% for 30 years. So we have found a nice, perfect storm of how everything is coming together. But we've had discussions. That man over there in the corner has been discussing sewer since what, 2015?
2014.
So this is not something that we've done at the drop of a hat. Staff has been discussing this thing. We have been, trying to figure out the best solution for our ratepayers, the best solution that's making us a good neighbor to our community, to the other communities. We've talked to Alito numerous times. We've had conversations with Hudson Oaks, nothing past, we're not really interested. We had a discussion with Weatherford. That was 2 years ago. And that was $30 million, and it hadn't got any cheaper. We discussed with Fort Worth. Fort Worth was, I think they were kind of excited until they found out what our flow was going to be. Fort Worth's about to build a $130 million plant at Mary's Creek. We're going to take up 10% of their capacity. Cowboy Logic's going to tell you the buy-in's $13 million. And your pipe's going to be $10 million, and that's at 2020 prices, and I can't put that in the ground till 2028. That's assuming I can get easements. So we have some challenges. This is not a fly-by-night deal. And I'm going to tell you, this has been painful for some of these council members. The last 2 weeks have been difficult for a lot. They've been called everything in the book. You get on social media and you will see some of the worst of people. This is not something that they just sat there and said, you know what, screw it. We're just going to go do it. There hasn't been a single one of these guys and ladies who has said, you know what, I don't care what they think. I've been on the phone since 9 o'clock today, talking about this today. The idea that we've done this at the drop of a hat, and we've done it without thinking this through, is flat wrong. And I apologize for addressing the gallery, Mr. Mayor, and not addressing council. I think all of you, all 6 of you, have worked hard to try to find something. And y'all have all disagreed at various times on what a solution is. But the thing is, I think we all agree there's a solution that needs to be had. And so, with that,
Thank you.
I'll conclude my remarks.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize, there is another email that I missed.
Okay.
This one did come in earlier, and my name is Barbara Bailey, and I live on Quail Ridge Road in Annetta North. You have heard my objection last week regards to the sewer plant your council members are strangely voting on today. I am appalled to see that you called a council meeting ahead of time just to get this plan pushed through. While I watched the meeting on Facebook Live, I was not able to be present due to the pandemic that's going on in our country, and especially in Texas with the widespread of coronavirus cases. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough, that while you think what you're doing is right, it seems to your Willow Park residents and also other town residents, there is something hidden that hasn't been shared to the public. While one of your council members so graciously collected information from May 2015 regards to the situation on temporary plans advisory boards looking for permanent solution and how past council members tabled the situation, the last date he disclosed on this issue was May 2018. The meeting when approval for a new wastewater system was brought up. It is July 2020 now, 2 years has passed, and now suddenly, within 2 months, you want to solve this issue and pass a new plan without communicating with anybody. How dare you act so quickly on something that you haven't talked about since 2018? And again, I question the motive for this quick move. If you blame previous council members not making the right decision in the past, it is you, all of you, right now, who has the power to make the right choice for residents in your community and surrounding communities. While watching the live footage, I was concerned to see how you treated each other on this issue, especially when you disregard questions from council members, especially when you shut down questions from council members, especially when some of you use a condescending tone towards anyone who's trying to question your sudden interest in the new sewage plant. While you say there is no motive, there's more and more information coming to light that might look like a coincidence, but there are way too many to think this. When was the last time you talked to the people that elected you into this position? If residents are talking on social media, to the paper, to local news outlets, that means you're failing to do your job, do your diligence. Have you disclosed the numbers on how much it will cost on a monthly basis to operate the new sewage plant? Have you disclosed that you have not cleared the section of the creek you have already polluted? Clean the selection of the creek you have already polluted. Have you disclosed the location of all future residential housing areas in Willow Park? Have you disclosed what are the plans with your current sewage facility after it's shut down? So many questions haven't been answered, but conveniently for you, a town hall meeting cannot be scheduled due to COVID-19. While the last thing residents want to spend money is to hire a lawyer to fight on their behalf, I know Annetta North and Willow Park residents will be uniting to stop you making a decision that is only advantageous to the ones who want to approve it. Barbara Bailey.
Thank you. I did, the gentleman mentioned earlier about talking to Mayor Schmidt in North Annetta. I did fail to, I'd reached out to Alito, I reached out to a neighbor on Jenkins Road, and I failed to mention Mayor Schmidt, but he and I have talked with, we have talked 2 or 3 times. I've also spoken with Mayor Pinkard in Annetta. So the action we're taking tonight is, it's not final. And what we hope and plan to do in the coming months is to reach out again to Alito, to the Annettas, to Weatherford. And if there's something that comes up that's more promising, that it can satisfy the needs of Willow Park, we will absolutely entertain it. This is not in stone. This is not, and Brian made a good statement, I mean, this council is not, you know, hell-bent on building it down there. We have a need, we addressed the need, the engineer gave us the information, that's what we're acting on. So the action we're taking tonight, it's, we're gonna move forward, but we're gonna, in the process, we're gonna talk with people, look at other options, and if something else comes up, we will do that. So, and if some of you have a problem with that, I'm sorry. So, anything else?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to offer an idea that we create a working group that would have an ultimate goal of working with our school districts, our community representatives, and our surrounding neighboring cities to devise a common sense solution for all of our future needs. We want to be proactive in coming up with a solution by engaging our neighbors and to offer solutions to address these needs. Over the course of the next, what I believe is 6 to 12 months, we will meet. I think this working group should meet and communicate directly with our different communities to find the very best option for all of us. We can do this together, and through working with all the surrounding parties, we will be able to set ourselves up with a properly planned solution for the years to come.
I agree, thank you. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's an action for the next council meeting to discuss. It's
I agree.
not on our agenda here.
Okay, item number 1, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to build a waste treatment facility as recommended by Jacob and Martin at a location to be determined.
Okay, do we have a discussion?
Parliamentary inquiry.
I'm sorry?
I have a parliamentary inquiry.
Okay,
We don't have a second.
we don't have a second.
No, this is a question.
Go ahead.
About the motion.
Go ahead.
Am I able to amend the motion now, or would I need to present that now, or would it pass and then present the amendment
Yeah,
second?
if it passes, then there's no reason to amend it, or you can't amend it.
But he has to have a second before he can amend
That's
it.
correct.
Okay.
So right now, we don't have a second.
Can I offer an amendment?
Sure.
I move to amend the motion to authorize the mayor and city staff to engage in discussions for potential partnerships for a permanent wastewater solution with neighboring cities, and to report back to council in a period of up to 180 days, beginning October 1st, 2020.
I do not agree with that motion because we need to stay with the timeline in order to obtain the funding and keep with the plan. I don't disagree with the intention of what you want to do, Eric, but that needs to be another separate parallel path, in my opinion.
But if we amend this agenda item to state that, it doesn't take away from the intent of what we're doing.
So we can add it to
We
it.
can add it, we're gonna amend this agenda item to add the language that Eric wants. It doesn't change anything.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead with that.
You're good with the amendment?
Sure,
Can someone
adding it
state
to
the
the end of
motion?
my amendment.
Just state the motion at some
Okay.
point.
So could I see your language, Eric?
Yes.
Thank you.
So if I can
So-
get this properly, if I'm understanding this correctly,
Well, Greg's about
amending-
to make the motion, so let him read it, and then that way we can discuss.
okay,
It'd just
I
be
misplaced
easier.
my, I would like to reread the motion. I would like to make a motion to build a waste treatment facility as recommended by Jacob and Martin at a location to be determined, and to authorize the mayor and city staff to engage in discussions for potential partnerships for a permanent wastewater solution with neighboring cities, and to report back to council in a period of up to 180 days, beginning 10/1/2020.
Okay,
We have a
Okay?
motion.
we have a
We
motion.
have a motion.
Here, you go, Eric.
Did we get a second?
Give me a second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any
Point of
discussion?
so let me get this straight.
Okay.
We're moving to go ahead with the plan as planned. Say that it's at a location to be determined, but yet we're already entering into an option for the piece of property on the south side of the interstate. Within this motion is a good idea to have a task force and partner with our neighboring cities to come up with a permanent solution. However, it seems like that's just a little accessory bow on it if we're still just going forward with the original motion.
The purpose of the.
From my perspective, what would make more sense if we are truly in good faith wanting to reach out with our neighbors, offer education for them, work with them, then the more logical thing to do would be to table that item tonight until we can have those discussions with the neighboring cities. That would be more of a good faith.
I think we.
Can I
Disagree.
can I ask on the motion, you do have location to be determined.
Right.
It is not specifying any of the four
Correct.
locations in the report. You're not specifying
No.
which.
And to answer her point, the
Okay.
purpose of the option is to give us up to 12 months. If that is chosen as a location, that gives us the right to purchase that property up to 12 months. So
However,
we're not locked in.
we have already we're already entering into an option, how much council authorized you to negotiate an option on the property.
And I don't have an offer to bring to you tonight.
You've been authorized to negotiate an option, which means that you can go put money down on the property to lock it in.
I gotta come back to council for approval for that.
But it is showing an action that this council is taking action in acquiring a piece of property. We've taken the first steps for that piece of property.
I disagree.
So.
I disagree.
Okay, well, you can disagree.
We own, of the 4 sites, the city owns 2 of them. The third one is designated a wastewater treatment plant, so that property's not going anywhere. The option was to be made available, so the 4th site could be a potential option. You option the property to basically keep it off the market.
Yes, I understand what an option is.
So there's no reason to put an option on property we own, and there's no reason to put an option on property that's designated a wastewater treatment plant.
All that does is level the playing field so we have access to all 4 pieces of property, should we choose to.
You just affirmed my assertion that we've taken action toward another site, because we don't need to put an option in on any of the other sites because we already own them.
What?
The optics of this, you're saying we haven't chosen a location. The
The purpose
You're
of the
dancing.
option, again, is to give us the opportunity
I
to purchase the property
understand.
within the next 12 months.
I fully understand what
In
an
the
option
event that
is.
that is the best technical and
I
and financial
understand
solution.
what an option is. I do not need it
So
mansplained
by,
to me.
so
Thank you
by,
very much. I
so
do
by
appreciate
locking
it.
in that piece of property, we have access to all 4 locations. And depending on the technical and financial solution that works best for the city, we have access to that piece of land. That's all it is.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All in favor? 4 votes, all opposed? We have 4 votes, motion passes. Thank you. Item number 2, to consider an act on professional services agreements with Jacob and Martin for engineering services, Hilltop Securities for financial services, and Norton Rose Fulbright for bond counsel services, all related to the wastewater treatment facility, and are obtaining financial assistance from the Texas Water Development Board. Mr. Grimes.
These are the, so we RFP'd for these services in April, or excuse me, prior to April. They were approved in April. These vendors were. They had contracts that were presented to clear up any other sort of issues. Yes, Amy, the mayor did sign them. No, they are not valid until council takes action, and they can either approve or disapprove those contracts tonight. You selected the vendors mentioned in the agenda item, and we had one engineering firm, Jacob and Martin. We had one bond counsel firm, Hilltop Securities, and we had 2 bond counsel firms, Norton Rose Fulbright and another firm out of San Antonio. These 3 were chosen. The only choice we had was actually Norton Rose Fulbright, and we have used them for a number of years on various bond issuances. They were scored by a committee of me, Bernie, and Candy, and they all scored appropriately. So council recommendation is to approve these contracts and proceed with the project.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve professional service agreements with Jacob and Martin for engineering services, Hilltop Securities for financial services, and Norton Rose Fulbright for bond counsel services, all related to the wastewater treatment facility and or obtaining financial assistance from the Texas Water Development Board.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any other questions?
Just so we're clear, this process would have to be in place no matter what option we do,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor? Thank you. All opposed? Thank you. Item number 3, Cross Timbers Park discussion update. Bernie, you're up.
You gotta stay.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Give you a brief update on where staff is and where Pacheco & Co. is in the process of moving forward with our city park.
Okay, thank you.
May 12th, I did a presentation on where the financial perspective was and the cost of the proposed park that we were going to build where the old public safety building used to reside. If you guys remember, initially, before we built the new public safety building, there was a park playground area there. So part of the building of the new public safety building, we had an agreement to build a park for the community. So on May 12th, we came in and gave you a financial option report, what we were looking at. I think we had $500,000 to $1.2 million. This council gave us direction to go back and prepare big documents with Pacheco & Co. at the sum of $500,000. And so I just want to let you know, we did that and give you a brief time frame on when we're going to issue that. August the 4th, bid documents will go out for contractors that can bid on doing the work for the city of Willow Park. We will get the bids back on the 25th of August. They will be open here at City Hall. After that is completed, then we'll bring back all the contractors that had bid on the job for the September 8th meeting for the council to award a contract to the bidder, lowest bidder for these services. Our projected start date should be October of this year. We're looking forward to 4 to 5 months, of construction, so we're looking hopefully contingent upon weather to be done either in January or February. So I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody may have pertaining to this development.
And when do the bids come in, you say?
25th of August, sir.
Okay, and they'll be opened here.
Yes, sir. They'll do their bids, with take them, go report, or reports given to the city secretary, and then we'll do a public opening at City Hall.
Okay.
And so you did say you anticipate that council will see those bids on the 28th? The council meeting?
The next council meeting is.
Okay.
Any other questions for Bernie? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the work, Bernie.
Thank you.
Item number 4, retail coach update. Aaron, you're up.
Finicky.
Mayor and Council, it's good to be in front of you today. Want to give you an update on what our firm has been doing for the city of Willow Park from a retail recruitment standpoint. So put together a handful of slides for you today. So want to just kind of update you on the process there. But before we do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about COVID-19 and the impact on retail. So we get asked that question all the time. How is COVID-19 impacting retail? We were basically shut down for about a month. Most retailers, most restaurants, unless they were considered essential. It's been pretty interesting to see what's happened here in Willow Park. Your sales tax numbers have been up from what I have seen. A lot of your businesses in town are considered essential, and we're able to stay. So what we've been doing, and kind of talked to Brian about this, and he said, hey, I'd love to be able to just track what we're doing as a community from a retail standpoint, so we can, maybe use it as a sales tool as we go out to recruit other retailers and restaurants. So put together just a couple of graphs for you here I wanted to show you, but this is the grocery sector. So on this side of the screen here, this is January 20th through the 26th. That's the first week we looked at. Going through July 20th through 26th. You can see this is the grocery sector, and what this shows is visits. So these are number of visits, people actually walking into the grocery store. The way we do this, we use cell phone analysis, or cell phone technology. So if you have a cell phone, which is most of us today, we can see who's walking into these stores. We're not selling that data, do anything with that, except for using it for this purpose, to be able to see how are we doing. You can kind of see the peak here, which is March 2nd through 22nd. That was kind of the panic buying. Do you remember that? Everybody went to the grocery store. You couldn't find toilet paper. You couldn't find other items like that, cleaning supplies, and those sort of things. But what I wanted to show you here is you're consistent. So your grocery store has done incredibly well during this time. These numbers are actually up from what they typically average, and we're not slowing down. In fact, I still see a little bit of an increase here at the grocery. So I wanted to show you that. That's helping lead to the increase in sales tax. We then looked at restaurants. Yes, sir. Sorry.
The grocery stores, is that Brookshire's, convenience stores, or just Brookshire's?
We just looked at Brookshire's for this. We do have convenience stores, but that graph we looked at was just grocery stores.
Okay.
Now, I will tell you, across the board, we've seen convenience stores do really well during this time as well. So people, instead of driving further distances to go to a grocery store, maybe just going to the corner store or something like that. So if we were to have convenience stores on here, I think we'd see an increase in there as well. We also looked at restaurants. Dining restaurants is something, kind of hard to think about, but we as Americans, we spend more money going out to eat than we do at the grocery store. Now that trend has kind of shifted in the last couple of months back to what it used to be, but I did want to show you at restaurants. So we were doing well at restaurants here. We were actually doing better than normal because I think people knew a shutdown was coming. So people were going out to eat, doing those things, and then we saw a huge drop right around that March 16th time period there. But I did want to show you we're seeing an increase. We saw a little bit of a drop again, but we're actually seeing an increase getting back to our restaurants and those sort of things. So I think that's helping with some of the sales tax numbers and those sort of things. And then lastly, I wanted to look at really your largest development from a retail standpoint. So we looked at the Shops at Willow Park. Again, Shops at Willow Park, you saw a big decrease kind of a valley there, but we're seeing some increases again there as well. So I wanted to share this with you. We're not just looking at these three sectors or these three shopping centers. We're looking at everything, but really trying to track that. This has been some good tools for us to use as we go talk to some of these restaurants and other retailers to say, look, even during a pandemic, you're going to expect strong retail sales here. You're going to expect strong restaurant sales, those sort of things. A lot of the restaurant sales we saw, those were people picking up, taking it to go. We were also tracking delivery as well. So it's not just people walking inside the store. So I wanted to show you that since I'm not in front of you every meeting or those sort of things, I wanted to just kind of show you what we're kind of seeing from that standpoint. So also through this process, we've talked about this many times, but it's incredibly important as we're out there talking to prospects, whether it's retailers, restaurants, whether it's developers, to have up-to-date data for them to see. They want to know how many people, not just live in Willow Park, but how many people live within your retail trade area. They want to know where people are coming from and those sort of things. So I want to show you a few more screens here. The way we're doing this kind of goes back to that COVID analysis. We're looking at cell phone technology, or using cell phone technology. So we looked at Brookshire's, we looked at Shops at Willow Park. We're tracking where are people coming from. So on the screen here, you'll see some reds and some oranges on the screen. That's where your highest concentration of consumers are coming. That's really your primary trade area. The blues on the screen, those residents are not making as many visits to Willow Park. But it goes to show you've got a pretty good draw. People are coming here, and as we build up that retail sector, as we build up that restaurant sector, you'll see more people come here, which will result in increased sales tax revenues and those sort of things. So that was looking at the Shops at Willow Park, very much a regional draw, going out towards obviously Weatherford and even into Fort Worth. So White Settlement, some of those areas are actually coming out this way, is what the numbers or what the analysis showed us. So those are positive things to take to prospects. We also looked at Brookshire's. Brookshire's was more of a kind of a community draw, not quite as large of a retail trade area as the Shops, for example. And that makes sense because you've got grocery competition kind of on each end of you, if you will, from a retail standpoint. There's just more choices out there. So we're using this information. These are hot off the press. We ran these reports last week. So we're always trying to get new data in front of prospects. This is what they're requiring nowadays. Instead of wanting to know how many people live within a 20-mile radius of Willow Park or how many people live within like a 20-minute drive time, they're wanting to know factual data. Where are they coming from? So we're using this data and taking that to them. So a couple more data slides. You can't really read it on here. I'll just tell you what this looks like. We looked at a primary retail trade area and then also a 30-minute drive time. So within that primary retail trade area, the total population for 2020 is just over 51,000. So Willow Park, your trade area is a lot larger than the city. You're serving a lot larger population. And that's the pitch we're making to retailers and restaurants. One thing I did notice is that your incomes continue to increase. So the average household income within this area is about $147,000. That's up $5,000 to $10,000 from when we ran this analysis last year. That's positive. As we go talk to prospects, they want to see higher incomes. Makes sense, but if you have higher incomes, you're spending more money on retail restaurants. You have a higher disposable income. So we looked at that, but we also wanted to look at a 30-minute drive time. We heard from a lot of the retailers and restaurants that they wanted to know, okay, we've got a lot of housing coming in out here in the area. Within basically 30 minutes of you, what does that look like? So we ran some reports and some analysis on a 30-minute drive time. Within a 30-minute drive time of Willow Park, you've got 428,000 people that live within a 30-minute drive time of Willow Park. Very large population. Your incomes decrease down to $93,000 is your average household income when we get out to 30 minutes. Makes sense. We're getting into other areas further out from the city. You're going to see an increase or a decrease in average household incomes. So we're taking this data on a regular basis. I know several of staff members, council members have sat in on meetings with us with prospects, and you've heard this is what they want to know. How many people live here? What do those incomes look like? What are the age groups? You're also becoming a little bit younger of a population. So one thing that we noticed in the primary trade area, just to go back here real quick, your primary trade area, your average age is 39. So the average age is 39. I looked at some historical data. Your average age going back about 10 years ago was about 50. So you've decreased by about 10 years. And again, retailers and restaurants like to see younger populations. Younger people spend more money. They don't save it as much as it hurts to say that. So this is what we're doing from a report standpoint, is putting these reports together, but not only doing that, getting it out in front of the prospects. And, it's one thing to just send out a report and say, hey, XYZ retailer, we'd love to see you locate here. But they want more than that. They've got to know what sites are available. We've got to take them on a tour of the community. You've got to kind of be a site selector, if you will. Brian and I talked about this the other day. Sometimes him and I and his staff and Bernie, we're having to do a lot of the work of these retailers for them. Especially with COVID-19 going on, a lot of these prospects, a lot of these retailers and restaurants, they're not allowed to travel, so they can't get here. They're having to look at Willow Park from a computer screen and say, okay, I can kind of see it. So we're out there doing the legwork for them, getting them sites, and it's worked. We've got prospects that are interested. So I want to give you just a kind of a short, brief recruitment update. Now, when I say recruitment, what that means is we're making phone calls. We're sending these reports. We're sending out emails, and then we're meeting in person with prospects. Anytime we can get a prospect to the market, they're a lot more likely to locate in the community, to actually get to see it, to see the traffic you have out here, to see the houses that are coming up out of the ground. That's really what we've got to. Brian, you had a developer in your office not too long ago, right after that ICSC event we went to. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think you drove around with them. Or
Yeah.
no, that's right, yeah. And
It was just before the event.
that's right, just before the event. That's what they want. They want to be able to see what's coming up out of the ground. You can't get that just looking at a computer screen. So a couple of things we've been working on right now, or what we've been working on, is a family entertainment prospect. Now, some of you council members were part of that meeting that we had with this family entertainment prospect. They had a site plan put together already. Not saying that's not going to happen, but we've got to find them another site. The site that they had originally gone for couldn't come to an agreement with the property owner, the developer, to make that happen. So we're working on family entertainment. That's one thing that's really missing out. This direction is some kind of family entertainment. You've got a couple of movie theaters and kind of the mix there with entertainment, but people are driving past Willow Park for those sort of things. We're working with a regional barbecue restaurant prospect, so I wanted to mention that as well. We've got several fast food restaurants, which just comes with the territory. When you're a growing community, fast food wants to be here. Fast food, because of COVID-19 and other things, just convenience, they've continued to do incredibly well. Had a conversation with Sonic, okay? So Sonic, we do a lot of work with Sonic, or have in the past, and was talking to one of their chief site selectors, and he said that during the pandemic, their sales across the board are up 127% because they were set up for it. They were. That's how you social distance. That's how you those sort of things. You stay in your car and you do that. So fast food restaurants have interest as well. We've been working with the Travel Stop or a travel center. It makes sense with your location, major interstate, to have a travel center here. First stop out of Fort Worth, first stop into Fort Worth, basically. So working with the travel center, finding sites is the key with all of these. So Brian, Bernie, and I have been working on sites. Really, the next 2 to 3 months, I think that's our focus. We've got them interested. Now we've got to figure out, how do we get them here? How do we make those sites happen? Last couple things, we're working with a burger place that also has a fresh market that's looking to come here, and then also a specialty grocer. So you have a grocery store, but a specialty grocer, something that's a little bit more unique that maybe you would drive into Fort Worth or drive into Weatherford or other areas for. So from a recruitment update standpoint, that's what we're working on right now. A couple of these have slowed just a tad because of COVID-19, but what our hope is, and what we're hearing in the retail industry, is that the fourth quarter is going to be really big for retail and into the next year. So what's happening right now with a lot of these prospects is they're getting ready. They're figuring out what sites they want to be at, so that when this pandemic is over, when things are looking up again, they're ready to move. They haven't just been kind of sitting on the sideline waiting. They're ready. So I was telling somebody the other day, I said, I don't know that I've ever gotten this many responses as quickly as I have from prospects. And I said, I thought about it. They're stuck in their homes like we are. They're stuck in front of their computers. They're not allowed to travel, many of them. So this is, Mayor and Council, this is what we've been working on. Would love to, if it's okay, ask for any questions or try to answer any, if that's okay, Mayor.
Sure. Anybody have any questions for Aaron? Aaron, thanks for your work.
Sure.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say, I always enjoy listening to you
Awesome.
talk.
Thanks.
Because you're passionate about it.
Good.
And economic development, this type of thing is really kind of what gets me going.
Awesome.
And so I really enjoyed reading through your reports, and I sent it to
Thanks.
a couple of our developers. I said,
Perfect.
yeah, I said, your property managers could probably find it advantageous to help bring their own businesses in here
Absolutely.
to recruit them. But yeah, I appreciate you coming and
Sure.
always being available, and this is exciting stuff.
Yeah, the key will be, and as you were mentioning, getting this data to not only developers that are out there, but local developers as well. So
Yes.
the shops
It
in Willow
was-
Park,
yeah.
so like Julia.
I sent
yeah,
it.
exactly.
I sent it to Kyle
So
yesterday.
Kyle's got it, Julia's
Yeah.
got it. Getting this information, then it's key that we're working off of the same trade area. So
Yes.
the shops, if we're pitching a trade area of 51,000 people, we want
Mm-hmm.
the shops to do that. There's some other developments that are happening that
Mm-hmm.
kind of operating off of the same data. So absolutely, thanks for passing that on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Anything else for Aaron? Thank you, Aaron.
All right, thank you. I'll have a good one. Thank you.
Discussion item number 5, stormwater.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
He became a dad last week or 2 weeks ago.
12 days ago.
God bless you.
Yeah.
But who's counting?
Thank you. Exactly. Became a dad for the third time.
Third time, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Turner, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Okay. Yeah, we got it. Thank you. So, here to talk about the stormwater utility rate and stormwater impact fee studies that you guys received. A little background. If you recall, back in July of last year, we completed a capital improvement plan for the drainage system. I think we presented it in November of last year, and in March, you guys tasked us with preparing these studies, a study for a stormwater utility rate and a stormwater impact fee for the purpose of making recommendations for a potential assessment of rates. And obviously, two components to that, and I'll start with the rates. So we're talking about a utility rate similar to a water system rate, wastewater rate, as opposed to the impact fee, which is a one-time fee. The rates are governed by, did I go to? Are we out of order? No, we're good, okay. The rates are governed by Chapter 395 of the Texas Local Government Code. That's what tells us, or tells you what process you have to go through to assess the rates. And I'll go into a little bit of detail at the very end about that process. But the rates can take on, they can be flat fees, they can be variable fees, or a combination. Variable fees based on acreage or assessed value or land use or impervious area. But they have to run back to the capital improvement plan. And you have to have a capital improvement plan in place before you can assess a fee. So the items that are in that plan and the dollars that were identified, this rate has to be associated with the implementation of those costs. But the rates that we're going to look at tonight are that, based on our recommendations, are going to be a variable structure, and they'll be based on impervious area, and kind of go into how that's determined as well. So there's several things we need to know. We need to know what kind of impervious area, or in some cases, living area there is available to associate with the rate. We also have to know how many accounts are going to be assessed. So kind of going through that, the first step to kind of create a baseline was we took a representative sample of the single-family residential, the multifamily, commercial, and institutional, the schools and the churches, to develop an average or estimate an average of each one of those. For instance, on a single-family residence, based on that information, we determined the average single-family living area would be 2,085 square feet. So we went through that for each category, and you can see the numbers we came up with there. And then using those numbers or backing into those numbers, we have to determine, we have to have a standard unit to apply so that everything's on an equal footing. So in this case, for utility rates, that's generally something like a standard or a single-family unit. And a single-family unit in this case is a 1,500 square foot, that's living space. Single-family would simply take that actual square footage. If you were looking at the average, the 2,048 square feet, for instance, divided by 1,500, and that would give you the living, or the SFU, the living area, standard family unit. Multifamily, it would be the same calculation, except there's a multiplier because multifamily tends to have more impervious cover, so there's an increase there. Commercial property, even though it's using the estimated impervious area instead of living area, that's the impervious area for the site, parking, building, and so forth. But it's divided by the same factor, and it's also it would also have a multiplier of 1.5 for the same reason. And then religious and institutional or educational institutions we would base that generally on the gross building square footage, and it's a direct calculation without a multiplier. And then you may want to include a single SFU for undeveloped or agricultural properties. And so next step was determine how many accounts we're looking at. We estimated what would be the current number of accounts if you adopted the rates based on your water and your trash, because everybody in town is not on water and everybody in town not necessarily on trash. So we took both of those, both of that set of data and came up with an estimated current number of accounts of 2287, and then projected the future accounts. And by the way, this is a 10-year planning period. So the future number of accounts in that 10-year planning period, we estimate based on our projected development that we've looked at in the CIP and other places. Came up with 3607 on that. And then we backed into the rate. And so, and on the next slide, you'll see I mentioned on the capital improvement plan, there was essentially $3.3 million in capital improvement in the capital improvement plan for drainage. And so whatever that rate is would have to be enough to cover the debt service on those improvements, in addition to operate O&M costs for the stormwater utility itself. And you'll see on the next slide when we back into that, taking into account the future increase in accounts, that came out to $5.50 per SFU. It's really hard, I know you guys have this, and it's really hard to see up here, but this is table 5 out of the report that you were giving. And if you look, again, it's kind of hard to tell, especially for me, but there's I think the third column says rate per SFU. That's the second column says number of SFUs per year. That's the single-family residential, multifamily, and institutional, and that's been broken out for the different equating factors for commercial and not commercial, but institutional and multifamily. And then the commercial, since it was based on impervious cover, was broken out separately. But the total revenue column, which is about looks like the 7th column over, is the combination of both of those. And you can see that we've added the O&M and then the debt service for all of the items mentioned in the capital improvement plan. And that debt service, the way it's broken out in this table and for the purposes of this discussion, it's staggered over that 10-year period. So there's different issues over that period of time. That may or may not be the best way to do that. I think you're probably more likely looking at maybe a couple of issues, one early and one sometime in the middle. But breaking it up has the advantage of making sure that your utility fund can get seeded before you're hit with that big debt service. But based on that format, if you look at the very end, the net on the very far column, you'll note that on the last 3 years, you see it's running in a deficit. So at that $5.50 per SFU, based on the projected number of accounts and the debt service from the capital improvement plan, you're running a deficit on those last 3 years. So possibly the surplus that you have in the beginning, which is considerable if you look, can carry you through that. But if you also want to consider the stormwater impact fee, then that would more than offset that 3-year deficit. So rather than increase that rate, because you're about middle of the road, if you look at the report, and I didn't include this in the slides, but compared to other entities that have a stormwater utility rate, and there are several in the area, at 550, you're right about in the middle, just high of middle of the road. So instead of pushing you up into the high end on a rate, we looked at the stormwater impact fee and also based on that surplus. And so, going into the impact fee discussion, it's also governed by Chapter 395 of the Government Code. It's defined as a charge or assessment imposed against new development in order to generate revenue for funding or recouping the cost of capital improvements, and it's a one-time fee. It's just like a water and sewer impact fee that you guys are familiar with, charged at the time of platting or when a building permit is issued. And what impact fees can and cannot be used to finance? It's really pretty simple. It can only finance things that are included in the capital improvement plan, period. So construction costs, engineering, acquisition, updates to the CIP itself, and finance charges related to the debt service for those things can be funded. It cannot fund O&M or administration related to running a stormwater utility. It can't fund construction of items that aren't specifically stated, capital items that aren't specifically stated in the CIP. So it has to track back to that CIP just like the rates. So there's a couple of ways you can develop those rates as well. What we did in the report you've got and what we'll be talking about in this discussion was based on water meter accounts. And this is just like what you do on your water and sewer when a new developer comes in. You look at the water meter size that he's got, and then if they're asking for a 3-inch meter, then you apply, and you can see the factors here, but you apply an equivalent factor for the larger size meter. So 1 5/8 meter, one standard residential 5/8 inch meter would be comparable to, or excuse me, I'm going backwards with that. Let's say 1 2-inch meter would be comparable to 8 5/8 inch standard meters, and 5/8 being the base unit. So I think we might, before we finalize this and get council and staff's input on this, and bring you a final report, we'll probably look at impervious cover as an option for doing that. For stormwater, it's probably a better way to do it. We kind of got down the road on this, and the reason for that is because using the meter size is kind of it's a more straightforward way to do it. It's basically easier. It takes quite a while to calculate all of the impervious area that would be required to do that. So, but we will complete that and then probably provide that as the preferred alternative. But for analysis and for example, that's what we've used here. And so going through that, using those meter equivalent factors, came up with an equivalent meter number currently in 2019 of 3155, and a projected equivalent meter number in 2029 of 4127. And so the difference between those two, the 972, is the growth that you would see between now and then. And that's the number that we would use to apply or to evaluate the impact fee, coming back to a yearly amount. So the calculation itself, you've got 3.3 million, as I said, in the capital improvement. So you have to determine how much of the system is serving existing development when you make these calculations, and then you also have to determine how much of the system will be serving future development. And again, that's a 10-year planning period. So it may not be full build out. So in this case, you've got our projection over the entire drainage system servicing 27% of existing development, which you cannot apply impact fees to, obviously. And then for the future development was 74%. So the difference between those gives you the amount that of the capital improvement cost that is impact fee eligible. And so based on those numbers and that factor, we're at 1.8 million. You also, by law, you cannot apply more than 50% of the eligible capital improvement cost to impact fees. So you have to back that out. So 1.8 million, you back out 50% and divide by the total number of equivalent accounts gives you a $926 impact fee per account. And so that's a maximum number. it can't be more than that number. Once you've, given that you've already gone through all of the other calculations and gotten to that point, assuming all, that process can vary, but once you get to that point, that number is the maximum that you can issue. So it can be less than that, but that's the maximum, that's the cap that you have. So if you work out those estimated number of equivalent connections over the next 10 years, the estimated revenue for that impact fee would be $90,000 per year. So if you look back at what's needed in that table that showed the deficit on those 3 years, it could probably be somewhat less than that. So that's a decision that has to be made, but it's a pretty simple determination to go back and see what that offset would be. And so the fees would be paid at the same time as water and sewer impact fees. And as I said, in the final report, we'll probably break that down a little more, but we'll probably also look at the different method of calculating that fee. One last thing, the process for implementing the fees, I think I talked a little bit about this before as well, but this goes for both, it says the impact fee up there, but it also applies to the rate as well. The Chapter 395 requirements require you to prepare a capital improvement plan. That's been done. We talked about that. It requires you to prepare a rate and impact fee assessment or study. That's what we're talking about tonight, and our plan is to go back once we have input from you guys and finalize that report within the next few days and bring that back to you. At which point, you're required to hold a public hearing to discuss the imposition of the fees, and within 30 days of that hearing, you have to take action and approve the fees if you intend to implement them. It has to be within 30 days of that time period. And so, at that point, the fees are in place, whether it just be the rate or the impact fees or both. They would be in effect at that point. And then every 5 years, at a minimum, you're by the 395 requirements, you're supposed to go back in and reevaluate. So, I know I rolled through that really fast, but lost my place a couple of times. But if you guys have questions, happy to answer.
Great presentation. Yeah, awesome. I think it's very good. So I guess what you're looking for now is suggestions on what we might want to see tweaking this study or.
Yeah, like I said, we've had no feedback from staff or council yet. And this is just for discussion.
Right.
Your agenda is only discussion. So we're looking for whatever you want to offer, and then we'll go back and tweak it and bring it back.
So there's a formula that they calculate of what can be charged?
On the impact fee, it's a specific formula
Yes.
that you use, and it's stated in the report. It actually lays out the formula that you use. On the rate, it's really just a matter of what you need to cover that debt. But yes, there's a specific formula on the impact fee to determine the maximum amount.
I would recommend that we get him to look at a pervious, if you could model that for us, or impervious.
For the impact fee, we will look at impervious cover. We have some of that data, like I said, that's a lot of data to crunch.
It's a lot more work, but I think
But we will do that, yeah.
I think it'll be advantageous, and the rate probably won't be. You mentioned debt, and I'm assuming at some point we'll probably have to issue some debt on this.
The study presumes you will. I would assume you would, yeah.
Pay-as-you-go is probably not, it's not a good economy of scale.
Right.
So I'm assuming you calculate somewhere around 5% in your model.
5%.
We can use, and I hate bringing this up right now, we could use Clean Water SRF.
Clean water is available for wastewater or
Drainage.
Storm sewer.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
whatever the rates are at the time.
That interest rate's around 1% at the moment.
Right.
Yeah. I won't geek out on it too much.
And so, what we're talking about is a monthly fee for residents when we're looking at the stormwater fee and an impact fee. And so on the impervious cover impact fee, if you crunch those numbers, are you saying we might get a number different than 926? Or what's the, is that kind of why you do it?
So the issue with the rate is that just because somebody has a big water meter doesn't necessarily mean they have a big footprint. So if you use the impervious area, I suspect that the that you're gonna be dividing it out over
It
a
could be
larger
structured differently.
number. So it's probably gonna be lower,
Okay,
your fee.
okay.
Yeah, and the impervious, that means like parking lots. So
Right.
some of the commercial areas, they're gonna have to pay more.
Commercial would pay out.
Yes, yeah.
The
And so
rate
that
or the
that way-
impact fee,
okay.
they would be,
Yeah.
they would be a larger
Yeah, to make.
equivalent user.
Mhm. So the impervious definitely needs to be
Right.
Okay.
considered for that.
Is that something that can be tweaked for the commercial, like, once we set, you get the approval and the imposition of the impact fees in step 4 there, once that rate is set, is that something that that is in place until we vote to change it? Can that be altered based on the needs, or if there was a certain situation where we had a desired retail customer that wanted to come in, but they weren't looking forward to paying
So the,
impervious or something like that, was that something that can be altered?
so the rule is in place to prevent you from arbitrarily
Adjusted.
putting out a large rate. But the rate, the rule requires that the rate cannot be changed unless you go back through this process. You'd have to have another public hearing and a amendment to the assessment. Now, if you lower it, I'm not sure, city attorney may have a thought on this. I suspect nobody's gonna argue if you lower it, but you're supposed to go back through the assessment process if you change it.
Do we know, would this be collected basically through the water bill? Is
Yes.
that- Okay.
It would
Water,
be
trash.
added to the monthly water bill along
Okay.
with, yeah.
Okay.
Is this something we'd probably take up after the budget?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you need any additional direction from us to finalize what you've got here?
I don't think so. no.
Okay.
Like I said, we just.
So we can come back and we'd have resolutions and things like that?
We'll
I
get
think.
back in September, late September, October.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're looking at that time frame to issue the final report, and is that what you're saying?
Well,
Makes
let's
sense.
get let me understand the process here. You're going to give us a final report here with impervious study and based on what little input we've provided
Right.
tonight. And we accept that final report, and then I assume we have resolutions or something that say,
That's correct.
with a public
An
hearing.
ordinance, I would think it would be an ordinance, probably.
Yeah.
Ordinance, okay.
Yeah.
So then that all happens,
Public hearing.
public hearing.
Public hearing, yeah.
Right, okay. So that all would be September, October
Okay.
timeframe.
After the budget.
Oh, yeah.
After the budget, yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Derek.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number six, website update. Rose, you're up.
Good evening, everyone. I'll try not to make this too long-winded since I'm the tail end of the show. So back in December, I came before you guys to get a new website approved, and we have been working on it diligently with our new company since then. There's been some delays. I don't know if y'all noticed, but we did kind of have a COVID thing happen, and that struck Civic Plus particularly hard because they deal primarily in governmental websites. So the good news is that we are now almost at the end of that process. We are hoping to launch sometime in the next few weeks. We're still migrating the last of the pages over from the old site. We're taking agendas and minutes back to 2015, and there's a lot of those. So we're still working on the last, and there's a few little fine-tuning steps we're still doing as well. But I wanted to kind of give you guys a sneak peek of what we're getting ready to launch. This is a section of our homepage. The reason that I'm showing this particular section is because this is one of the features right here that I think a lot of people are going to be very excited about. It says subscribe, for those of you who can't read it. I know it's kind of small. What this is going to allow for is, if you go to our website and you input your email right here, after clicking the subscribe button, you can choose, and the list goes way down here, that if we post anything on any of these pages, you're going to get an email. And this is open to anybody that wants to subscribe to our website, which means if we post an agenda, anybody who wants to sign up, it'll be emailed to them immediately. If we send out, say, an urgent alert that, hey, you guys, we are having to call a special city council meeting, that will go out immediately. It will be up to our citizens and anyone else who wants to stay in the loop with our city to go here, subscribe, tell us everything they want to hear from us on when we post it to the website, and it will automatically notify them when we post. I think that's a feature a lot of people are going to be really excited about. I know I'm very excited about it. This is another feature I'm very excited about. This is a live feed of our Facebook page, which means that if we have citizens that are not on Facebook and they are worried that they are going to be missing information that is on our Facebook, it's going to be at willowpark.org. As we expand our social media presence to other platforms in the future, those feeds will also be featured here. Just to kind of give you an idea of what the internal page navigation looks like, I pulled finance as an example. We have the contact information here. We have a description of the department, and then our links are going to be over here on the left-hand side, and that will allow people to get into the sub-menus and those sorts of things. Eventually, as we flesh the site out more, this news section on the right-hand side will be department-specific news. So if, say, we post something to the finance department that is a finance-related news item, when you click on finance, you're going to get their news items first. There's a lot of expansion capabilities. There's a lot of more modules that we can add as we go. We're starting with what we feel like are the most important things, and once we launch it, I will continue to build out probably for the next several months. So we'll see more and more features and more items added as we go. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Great job, Rose.
Looks great.
Looks good. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
When, an estimated time, you think?
I'd say 2 to 3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Anything else? All right, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Item number 7, to consider and act on items to be considered for future council meeting. Mr. Grimes?
We have, the only thing I've got right now is I got a budget workshop for the 11th. We did, and I'll make the comments later, but we have, it was suggested at the last meeting that we do this in April, on the August 11 meeting. I don't have anything on the docket as of tonight. I'm assuming some of those things may change, but as of tonight, I have nothing other than the budget.
We're going to be discussing between now and the 11th a group to meet with our neighboring cities.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have that at August 11th. We'll be announcing that.
Okay.
So put that on there and remind me of that. We'll have that on the 11th.
You got it.
Anything else?
Yes, I want to see an item on the next agenda for Ms. Fennell to provide the data I've repeatedly requested of her allegations of crimes committed by this council for violation of Open Meetings Acts. And that is a crime for an Open Meeting Act violation is a crime. So I want to know names, dates, and topics covered. You failed to do that, and you liberally thrown that out there, so please provide the details, which you have not done.
I gave you a list. You may want to come to the,
Random topics. I want names, dates, and topics covered.
you may want to come to the council meeting prepared to show that the city did post those notices on that list that I gave you. I'll be ready. I'll have it.
Okay?
Okay, anything else?
When is the City Hall committee meeting?
Thursday morning.
Thursday morning.
Okay, so is it possible to do an update on that, or are we going to postpone that?
We're going to have a meeting Thursday morning.
Okay.
We're having the meeting Thursday morning.
We'll have an update the 11th.
That's what I was asking.
I'm assuming.
Will there be an update on the 11th?
Yes.
I'm assuming there will be.
Possibly. Okay.
Yes.
Well, it's just one we've been bumping each
Yeah.
time, so that's why I bring it
Yeah.
up again.
We have it Thursday morning, and we'll
Okay.
have an update on the 11th.
I have nothing else.
Okay, if nothing else, we'll set a date, time for the next council meeting. I think that's the 11th, Mr. Grimes?
Sir?
The 11th?
Yes, sir.
August the 11th?
Yes, sir.
But 6 PM for the budget workshop,
Yeah, do y'all want to do a budget workshop at 6?
6 PM for budget workshop and 7 PM for council meeting?
Yep.
Check.
Is it possible to ask a question?
Could you wait till after the meeting, please? Thank you. Okay, anything else on the council meeting? We're set for August 11th, 6 PM budget workshop. Mayor and council comments. Mr. Grimes, you have anything?
We got our.
Mayor and council members, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm looking forward to reaching out to our neighbors to the south, and we're going to see, we're going to work through this waste treatment plant, and we're going to give it, we're going to talk, we've talked to people, we're going to talk to them again, and there's some we haven't, we will. And hopefully, 6-8 months or whatever, hopefully before that, we'll have something firm that we can move on and everybody's on board with. Any other council member comments?
Yes, I want to express my disappointment in the community news for not following up on allegations made by Ms. Fennell, wrongdoing by this council. I think that's just a sham, and it seems like sensational news and fake news, so I'm truly disappointed in the community news for not doing their due diligence, picking up the phone, and calling council members or the mayors to get confirmation and clarification. They know how to get hold of us. We're willing to talk to them. I talked to Randy at 9 o'clock last Wednesday about another topic, but he doesn't bring up these other issues. It's like he wants to produce sensational news, and that's very disappointing.
Okay, Mr. Grimes, city manager comments.
Any other council members?
I think everybody's talking.
We got our valuations in Friday afternoon, and I've completed the preliminary budgets. Our values went up, I want to say roughly 11%-ish. Don't hold me to that. Right now, we're modeling that we'll keep the same overall tax rate. As a worst-case scenario, we could lower it if you chose to. But the budget's looking good. Visited with Jake last week. We feel very confident we're going to hit our number on sales tax, that we're going to come up with the 1.15. We're actually probably going to come in significantly higher than that. I'm waiting until about 2 weeks from now when I get August numbers in. Our M&O, we hit that at, I was off just a little bit, we hit it at 101%. So y'all can hit me with the wet noodle whenever you want to. We're looking good financially, and things are rolling pretty good. Budget's not going to be that difficult. We've been stating this almost since the COVID hit. We're looking to produce a flat budget to you guys, and barring some minor changes and tweaks that we're going to need to do, you're going to have a flat budget from last year. And so I look forward to getting this out to you. I sent it to department heads yesterday. I wanted them to review it before I send it to you guys. So expect that in your inboxes sometime later this week.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Move adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.